Voluntaryist Academy is an educational platform dedicated to the principles of non-aggression, self-ownership, and the ethical philosophy of voluntarism. Here, we reject the mythology of political authority and embrace the timeless truth that all human interaction should be grounded in consent and moral integrity. Through rigorous study, in-depth courses, and accessible materials, Voluntaryist Academy equips individuals with the tools to critically examine the foundations of coercive systems and to replace them with voluntary, peaceful alternatives rooted in natural law. So whether you are new to these ideas or looking to deepen your understanding, Voluntaryist Academy provides a structured path to intellectual freedom, ethical consistency, and personal sovereignty. Welcome. Explore the curriculum, challenge false assumptions, learn to live free. Streaming live every Saturday night at around 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern. And my name is James Cordiner. Thank you for tuning in. We've been covering An Agorist Primer by Samuel Edward Konkin III. And tonight we're going to finish I call it like a pamphlet. It's a small book. But yeah, we're going to finish the primer tonight. So let's get right into it. Okay. Chapter 7, Agorism. To understand agorism fully and to compare it to competing ways of thinking, one needs to know two things about it: its goal and its path to that goal. This knowledge is critical to evaluating all ideologies. The goal is living in the agora, and the path is expanding counter-economics. Remember our constant, if not nagging, emphasis on consistency, both internally and with reality. Agorism must have a path consistent with its goal and a goal consistent with its path. The axioms of agorism. A free society is the goal of many people. Not all of them agorists or even libertarians. Agorists can see nothing but a free market and a free society. After all, who or what will prevent it? The first axiom of agorism. The closest approach to a free society is an uncorrupted agora, or an open marketplace. An axiom is a principle or premise of a way of thinking. It is arrived at by insight, induction, and observation of nature. Theorems are arrived at deductively from axioms. A zeroth axiom of agorism might be: there are no contradictions in reality, and theory must be consistent with reality. Commonly known axioms in philosophy are existence exists, and A is A. Well-known mathematical axioms are things equal to another thing are equal to each other, and a statement leading to a contradiction with a theorem or axiom is false. The first 6 chapters of this primer preceded the actual presentation of agorism to give you, the reader, enough understanding of economics, counter-economics, and libertarianism to see from where the insights that produced agorism were derived. They were not chosen arbitrarily, but rather as a result of years of bitter experience and, in some cases, furious battles and acts of resistance. The hardcore agorists had to have something worth dying for, and, far more important, worth living for. The second axiom of agorism. The agora self-corrects for small perturbations of corruption. Small perturbations of corruption. This axiom leads us to a far more detailed picture of what our nearly free society would look like. It means simply that free market entities will defend the free market. People have to choose to do it, of course, but the incentive, or offering of subjective value satisfaction, will be present to motivate them to do so and will be sufficient to motivate enough people to do so. Occasional criminals will be discovered, sought, found, apprehended, tried, sentenced, compelled to deliver restitution, and, if possible, deterred from further actions. The third axiom of agorism: the moral system of any agora is compatible with pure libertarianism. This axiom means that life and property are safe from all those who act morally in this society. We will describe this in the next section, but let us complete the axioms first. The fourth axiom of agorism: agora in part is agora in whole. To a workable approximation, the corruption of an agora raises protection costs and risks. This axiom's use will become blindingly clear when we deal with the path. Agorism has more theory, but it is derived from these axioms. For the professional logicians tripping across the theory for the first time, I need to add a fifth axiom for completion. Agorism theory is an open system. This simply means that we may discover and add on other axioms, then check to see how consistent they are with what we already have. The goal of agora. With that short burst of hard philosophy in the last section, we are ready to picture the society we are aiming for. The goal of agorism is the agora, the society of the open marketplace, as near to untainted by theft, assault, and fraud as can be humanly attained, is as close to a free society as can be achieved. And a free society is the only one in which each and every one of us can satisfy his or her subjective values without crushing others' values by violence and coercion. It's a bit late to notice, perhaps, but if your highest values require murder and theft, you will not like the agora. Still, you have not wasted your time as you have just read an introduction to the thinking of your worst enemy. Science fiction has given us many convincing portrayals of future societies, from the grotesquely tyrannical 1984 to the transitional to freedom, like the moon is a harsh mistress, or kings of the high frontier, to actual free market anarchies that accidentally arose, as in The Syndic, The Great Explosion, or The Probability Broach. One even portrayed a likely scenario for an agorist revolution. That one's called Alongside Night. Still, we cannot predict or foresee all the changes. Fortunately, we can get a good picture of an agorist society by picking out those changes. Fortunately, I read that. We can get a good picture of an agorist society by picking out those changes from our present statist societies. That must occur, or we simply don't have agorism. Our axioms give us that much. States will be gone. Roads will be run by competing market companies and kept in repair, for a change, to attract more customers. Then again, cars may levitate over the roads for all we know, or fly or take tunnels to preserve scenery. If you can think of one good reason to do something some way, in a free market it will be tried, in many ways will work at the same time, for different reasons. The post office will be gone, and mail, if not replaced by email entirely, will be efficiently and cheaply delivered ever faster. War will be gone. Defense budgets will be gone. Taxes will be gone. You will pay for what you get only when you want it, unless what you want is a gift. I repeat, I cannot emphasize enough or wax floridly enough. The opportunities in freedom explode into the unimaginable. The sheer complexity of all possible choice moves to the infinite as restrictions approach zero. Let us focus very narrowly on only one business in the totally free marketplace. Justice. Justice is a business. It's not free. Someone must pay for its workings. While justice, in the abstract, is not an economic question. Remember the Vetfrier of Chapter 1. The obtaining of justice is an economic service. Consider this illustration. Your completely tricked out media center is stolen from your home. You notify laissez-faire insurance and protection company immediately. As fast as modern technology permits, you receive an identical screen, receiver, game station, speakers, cables, and a sack full of remotes to replace the original, with downloads of any programs you missed in the interim. You have achieved full restoration of your subjective value to the condition it would have been had there been no act of aggression. Surely that is the goal of justice. Now, how is this paid for in a free market? Consistently with our understanding of economics and libertarian morality. The moral position first. You delegate LFI and PCO as your agent to use defensive force to regain your missing property and all expenses incurred. If LFI and PCO attempt to extract more from the ultimately caught thief, they're on their own. The thief's insurance and protection company is entitled to defend the thief. Costs are paid for in three ways. First, as insurance. A small number of criminals may elude even the highly efficient, super technological, extremely competitive protection agencies of the agorist future. Insurance is simply sharing the risk of something happening with all the others subscribing to LFI and PCO. As the odds of a thief getting away with it approaches zero, your premium approaches zero. Second, as protection, you install locks and detectors, alarms, and maybe even booby traps. Actually, since your premiums will go down as you make yourself aggression-proof, protection will incur minimal additional costs. Third, as restitution. The aggressor, when apprehended, pays LFI and PCO 1, the cost of replacement of the purloined or damaged goods. 2, interest for the time the goods were stolen. 3, any costs related to apprehension, including fees for investigators, arresting agents, arbitrators, which are market judges, and if still necessary, enforcers' charges to reclaim your property. Note all the differences between statism and agorism. First, in a state, you can expect nothing from the police if you report a criminal. Maybe someday you'll get your property back if the criminal is ever caught and when they're through using the components as evidence. Since the odds of police accomplishing this are less than 10%, your insurance premiums, if the government still allows insurance companies, reflect the sharing of the high risk of theft plus whatever taxes the state tax on, plus the inefficiencies and additional costs of government regulation of the insurance industry. Did you ever try to collect insurance? Notice the form filling and red tape. just like any other government bureaucracy imposed on a supposedly free enterprise. Second, in a state, you are under the control of the state in a criminal proceeding. Even though you are the victim, you will be told when to appear, where to go, and you will be forced to see the case through even if you change your mind. In the Agora, should the matter go to arbitration, you will be required to report your loss since you want to have it replaced. That's all. The theft may even be recorded on video, but even if not, the protection company's detectives do all the work. You stand back or go about your business and let them do their jobs. That's all. You may never be called again even if the thief is caught, convicted, and compelled to provide restitution. If LFI and PICO needs more testimony from you, they will ask you to attend the arbitration, and if they err, they will pay for the error. Should they need you inordinately, they will pay you for your trouble. Or they will let you go and lose the case if you want too much for your time. Third, in a state everything is monopolized. Your appeal is to another judge who works for the state too. In the Agora, competition and choice is everywhere. There are plenty of insurance and protection companies from which to choose, all eager for your business. They can choose from a number of crack detectives, all competing to show that they are the best investigators. Should the matter go to arbitration, a number of arbitrators are competing for the positions, hoping to prove themselves the fairest and most worthy of your company's hire. Furthermore, if crime risks go up in your neighborhood, it is in the interest of your protection company and those companies in your neighborhoods or companies of your neighbors to hire protectors or guards to patrol your area. Unless you attack your neighbor, their protectors will never threaten you. Fourth, in a state, your police protection is just as likely to arrest you for some crime that has no victim. There are no such victimless crimes in the Agora. Fifth, the rights of the victim, you, can never be overridden by the rights of the real criminal. Under Agorist justice, the arbitrator rules on the evidence that you are or are not entitled to restitution of goods, or even parts of the body, as technology makes that possible, interest for time lost, and your protection agency's expenses, including detection and apprehension costs. The moment the line is crossed into extracting more from the media center thief than full restitution of your components and all costs incurred, you and your company becomes the aggressor, and the ex-thief's protection agency will now honor its contract to defend him. All insurance and protection contracts in an agorist society will stipulate that you cannot be protected from restitution or restoration proceedings after the protection company has defended you up to a fair arbitration. This ideal, seldom lived up to by states, is called due process. The difference between agorist protection and state policing has many more characteristics, but this list gives you a good idea. There is nothing the state can offer you in moral protection that the market cannot offer, and the free market will function faster and better than the state. It's true that an occasional market company may be unsound, but you will always have the option of switching to a better competitor. Under a state, you know your protection service will always be the same, poor with no alternative. The state offers one thing the free market cannot and will not offer: aggression. If you wish to attack your immediate neighbors, you'll need state police to attack them for the crimes of belonging to the wrong religious group, or of taking the wrong intoxicant, or performing sex in a way of which you disapprove. And of course, Your neighbors will need state police to attack you for similar reasons. If you want to attack faraway neighbors, you need a state army. Or maybe you want to live in peace and freedom and will be satisfied with protection and defense. 2 words or so about national defense. In just a moment. Full agorism obviously needs no quote-unquote national defense. There are no nations to defend and no nations from which to be defended. Local protection against occasional criminals is sufficient. Once in a while, criminals might band together to overwhelm a single protection company. Then the Agorist Protection Agency merely needs to hire another protection company to assist it. Similarly, should one protection company go bad, a few of the hundreds of others would be enough to apprehend its agents and shut it down. But, in fact, market forces would sap such a company's destructive power long before it came to that. People raised in an agorist society would stop paying its insurance premiums and shift to its competitors. Detective and investigation agencies would terminate their contracts with it. Arbitrators would consistently rule against its aggressive moves. Agents working for the company would quit and go elsewhere. Secretaries and office help would walk out rather than have their reputations sullied by associating with such unagoristic types. Even restaurants and grocery stores would refuse to sell to the renegades or would hike their prices to show their additional loss of subjective value in dealing with such coercive filth. Perhaps the company turning state would pay higher prices to hold on to their employees and supplies or replace them. But where would they get their money? They would lose customers to the moment they started to act like a government. It is just as likely that they would collapse if they attempted to live by stealing, otherwise known as tax collecting, since they would be compelled by force of other companies, that is, to cease and desist their aggression against those companies' clients. People raised and educated to love an agorist society could not fall for tax paying, and if they ever do, we will sink all the way down the road of corruption and oppression to the level of statism. The statism that we, quote-unquote, enjoy today. The second word about territorial defense deals with the concerns of most people when they meet some version of anarchy. Even the business-like, efficient, free market kind. How does the non-state defend itself against all the states still left? The glib answer is, let me count the ways. A few should suffice to allay nameless fears. First, the context must not be forgotten. Governments will not disappear until it is rejected by the overwhelming majority of the people under its rule. It is highly unlikely that other people in other countries around the world will be unaffected should North America oust its state through this libertarian infection. A Libertarian International, formed in 1980, had its first convention in Zurich in August of 1982 and continues into the 21st century as the International Society for Individual Liberty, or the ISIL. Many of these members could be relied upon to act as fifth columnists in their home countries to stop their governments from attacking the obviously peaceful anarchy. Second, although we do not rule out naked aggression, remember that wars are caused by both sides. There is an entire branch of libertarian theory we skipped in making this presentation. Actually, more than one. But this one is called Revisionist History, which rips the mask off government war propaganda to reveal the gleaming skull underneath. The United States, for example, has not been involved in a single war since the first revolution that could have that could not have been avoided, nor one that would have cost American citizens their liberty had it been avoided. Said liberty, to be sure, which they were already losing to their own government. Several volumes have been written about each of these wars, from establishment and revisionist perspectives, but let me just list the bold, simple conclusions here, and you can research for yourself whether I am right. The War of 1812. U.S. war hawks sought a land grab in Canada. Pretext for the war: imprisonment of American seamen in ships running the British blockade of Napoleon. True, but trivial in comparison to war and its cost in lives and freedom. The Mexican War. U.S. Southern interests sought land grab of Texas and other Mexican territories to form more quote-unquote slave states to balance off new northern quote-unquote free states. The pretext? Mexico attacked the Republic of Texas and thus U.S. soil. Probably not, and Texas was not U.S. soil at that time. The war between the states, or the Civil War. The North wished to enslave the South. South justifiably wished to be free of the North. Pretext: the abolition of slavery in the South. But the North kept slavery in Northern Territory. Also, hardcore abolitionists supported both Southern secession and abolition of slavery as same issue of freedom. Next, we have the Spanish-American War. U.S. interests grabbed Spanish colonies like Cuba and the Philippines for exploitation and turned the U.S. state into an old world empire. The pretext for this war: U.S. battleship Maine was attacked in a Cuban harbor. Remember the Maine. Even though innocent, Spain apologized anyway and bent over backwards to avoid war. World War I. U.S. interests, especially bankers, bet on Great Britain and moved U.S. in to save their investments when Russia pulled out, leaving Germany one front. The pretext? German U-boats attacked a British ship carrying Americans. The declaration of unrestricted submarine warfare zones by Germany. So that was, and then trivial relative to war, and U.S. ships should not have taken their chances if they insisted on running huge risks for high profits by penetrating the blockades. Great Britain was blockading Germany, and other interests wanted to replay the War of 1812 and attack Britain. World War II in Europe, 1939. Britain gave Poland a blank check treaty if they would hold out 99% German Danzig from Germany. The last adjustment of the Versailles Treaty, ending World War I, that penalized Germany. Also, Britain and France refused alliance with Russia against the fascist menace. Although Bolshevik Russia was seriously threatened by Nazi aggression, unlike Danzig-less Poland, not to mention distant Great Britain, and thus pushed the USSR to the German side in fear. Poland was overwhelmingly outnumbered and still refused to return German Danzig. The pretext? Germany invaded Poland without provocation, which is nonsense, Allied war propaganda. Poland was so surprised that they were already fully mobilized and standing on the border on September 1st of 1939. World War II, the Pacific Theater, 1941. The United States New Deal administration sought entry to the European theater, which we just talked about, and required an attack since 80% of Americans opposed bailing out Britain again. Japanese were strangled by British blockade aided by neutral U.S. ships. The Japanese funds in U.S. were seized by the U.S. government, and the Japanese emissaries for peace were insulted and scorned. But the pretext was that Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, the Pearl Harbor naval installation. Few, if any, innocent U.S. civilians injured. But Japan knew it would be dragged. Japan knew it would be dragged into the war and would lose. It struck first to delay the inevitable. The Japanese Bushido Code was offended deliberately and provocatively by the U.S. statists. The Korean War. Artificial division of Korea from World War II between a northern communist dictatorship and a southern pro-U.S. state dictatorship. The U.S. entered to prop up colonies. France and Japan were abandoning in Southeast Asia for a variety of corporate interest and Soviet containment reasons. The pretext, communist aggression, which involved China and Russia. China attacked the U.S. after American troops threatened to cross the Yalu River into China. Russia sat back and sold arms, as the U.S. had done before landing troops. Vietnam War. The U.S. attempted to keep former French Indochina from passing into the Eastern Bloc. See the Korean War. This was a continuation from 1954. As it became obvious immediately after, when China switched over to the U.S. side, communist countries are not necessarily threats to the U.S., but the pretext was defend South Vietnamese, who wanted Western-style democracy from communist form of statists. The South Vietnamese were split, and there was never anything even as free as democracy there under the various generals and the Diem dictatorship. Diem, I think that, anyways. El Salvador. The certain U.S. industries and banks have heavy investments in Latin American countries and fear their expropriation by communist or Marxist governments. The pretext is Salvadorians want democracy, not communism. Salvadorans voted in U.S. monitored election and got a genuine fascist government. Arena Party of Roberto de Albios, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Oboisan, a massive murder of Democrats, let alone communists, by arena death squads. The U.S. then overruled the results of an election they had demanded in the first place. Iraq War I. The U.S. sought to preserve its interests in Saudi Arabian oil fields, fearing that if Kuwait fell and former U.S. ally Saddam Hussein enriched himself from oil profits there, then Saudi Arabia might be next. The pretext? Iraq invaded Kuwait, separate from Iraq by British in 1932, to regain its port and to seize oil fields on the theory that they were using a slant drill to drink the milkshake of Iraq's al-Ramali fields. The Afghan War. U.S. and U.K. attempt to secure Afghanistan to protect a proposed natural gas pipeline from Turkmenistan to Pakistan, and India passing right through the Kandahar province. Kandahar. This in an effort to counteract perceived Russo-Iranian energy trade in the region. But the pretext? The Taliban gave aid and comfort to 9/11 attack coordinator Osama bin Laden, oppressed women, and served as a training haven for Islamic fundamentalist terrorists. Iraq War II. U.S. continued to perceive Iraq as a threat to its oil interests in the Middle East, especially after Iraq's scorched earth retreat from the Kuwaiti oil fields in 1991. In addition, personal grudges may have played a part, since the sitting president's father had once been targeted for assassination by Hussein. The pretext? Saddam Hussein's repeated scuffling of numerous UN resolutions and rumors that Iraq still pursued weapons of mass destruction. By the way, though, those quickie explanations are not meant to convince you that the U.S. was wrong and the other sides were right. The Agorist viewpoint is that the U.S. state was wrong and its war opponents were wrong. Both or either could have avoided any of the above wars. And before we forget, there is an obvious third way the North American non-state defends itself against the state around it, if it is Agorist. The protection agencies form larger syndicates than the ones they form in the case we mentioned above of a local protection company going renegade. If all the policyholders of all the insurance and protection companies are threatened by invasion, they will throw all their combined resources and higher technology, judging by free enterprise's past performance, on defense of the common ground. Fourth, the people would rise up in militias or guerrilla units to defend their incredibly free society. There were advanced hints of this strategy when the Ukrainian anarchist army under Nestor Makhno had no trouble raising militia to protect the local fanners from roving armies of Reds and Whites during the Russian Revolution. Fifth, I think that's not supposed to say fanners. I think it's supposed to say farmers. Anyways, fifth, most wars have had a strong economic component. Often, access to goods or natural resources was barred by protectionist state economic policies. The anarchy would have full free trade with full access. Anyone wanting anything produced in the North American anarchy could easily buy it without taxes and tariffs and at a cheaper price than anywhere else. Notice how giant communist China went out of its way to not to conquer tiny Hong Kong, although the British were ready to toss it to them anytime they asked, and finally did. Even now, Hong Kong has not seen red Chinese tanks rolling through its streets to crush its capitalist minions. In fact, much of China has become a mirror of Hong Kong, with party leaders and the People's Liberation Army growing rich on market activities, white, black, and gray. Check also the little free ports and cities of Monaco, Andorra, Liechtenstein, Singapore, and San Marino. Sixth, and we'll have to stop eventually, so let it be here. The states will quarrel amongst themselves, since the anarchy threatens no state immediately. Point 2, long term it does, as a shining example of better conditions, but other states will, with standing militaries, do threaten at all times. What state would want the easy access to resources, point 5, in the anarchy cut off by another state using it? That could mean war. But among the states, while the anarchy freely sells to all sides without favor or penalty, critics of free market anarchy often try to have their cake and eat it too. For example, they may argue that there are too few states. Quote, what happens if the states gang up? End quote. And at the same time, too many. Quote, how can one anarchy survive among all those states? As in the case of historical examples such as revolutionary France or revolutionary Russia, where the surrounding states did gang up to crush the new type of state, if the country is big enough, it will survive even foreign interference, even in the middle of civil war, which both experienced, let alone Agorist peace. Additional tactics for defense and reasons for non-aggression are left as an exercise for the reader. The Agorist path. Getting from here, meaning statism, to there, agorism, is the second and perhaps defining characteristic of the latter. Unlike libertarianism, agorism offers both goal and path as an internally consistent package deal. The short answer is given in axiom 4. A longer answer is, Applying counter-economics to all your actions and linking preferentially with others who do so creates an ever bigger agora. How that works and what 2 things you need to watch for is an excellent chapter with which to end this primer. So before we do that, I want to just, again, thank everybody for tuning in at this point. We're just going to take a short break. And right now, the website, I'm experiencing some technical difficulties on the website. So I want to direct everybody over to the One Great Work Network, onegreatworknetwork.com, where you can find close to 80 different content creators, I think, at this point. There's a big list you guys can see on the screen right now of all sorts of content creators, including myself. Look at that. There he is, me, James Cordiner. You can come over to voluntaryistacademy.com, and the reason why I wanted to point out the reason why I wanted to point out the One Great Work Network tonight is in case the website ever does go down. Mark Passio, God bless him. Thank you so much, dude. You're a real champion among men, and he set up this One Great Work Network like 6 years ago, and I've been on there for a few years, and what this serves, the purpose that this serves is as a central hub for many people talking in this space about natural law and freedom and the occult. So whatever your flavor is with this alternative media, you'll find somebody on the One Great Work Network talking about it. So should you ever go to voluntaryistacademy.com and it's like, oh, it doesn't exist anymore, what happened? You can go to onegreatworknetwork.com/James-Cordiner, and you can find my page there, and you can catch up on old shows and everything. Look, and there's a bunch of stuff that's from like my previous project called A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth that I did years ago, before Voluntarist Academy was ever a thing. Many interviews with very interesting people, a lot of friends made, and a lot of truth and information discovered. And so if you want to do that, go over to there. And there's a link, I think, in the show notes right now that you could probably click away to find yourself over there. And you can find me on all sorts of social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, all that stuff. It's scrolling underneath us every episode. And if you want to make a small donation, you want to help keep this project going and growing, you can do that over at the onegreatworknetwork.com. And, that would help me fix the website if I need to fix the website or, replace whatever. I want to keep this operation kind of, going on its own steam. And in my personal life, I have a lot of responsibilities that I have to live up to. But so far, we've had a pretty good success in kind of getting this project to support itself, self-sustaining content creation project. Thank you to everybody who's contributed to that over the years. It's so greatly appreciated. So, but yeah, so that's, I think, all I got. And the website should be back up pretty soon. We can even give it a try right now, see if it works. Nope. Okay, that's fine. Anyways, moving on. So I'll check the chat at the end, see if there's anything compelling to talk about there. And other than that, I got nothing. I got nothing else. So anyways, we're going to finish up. We're going to finish this strong, and then I'm going to get out of here. All right. So chapter 8, Applied Agorism. At this concluding point, we would like to tie together all we have learned. Thus, we can see clearly the path to be taken with a view to ending up with a new ability to figure out how each of us can best walk that path to our own advantage. So let us begin by visualizing that pathway. The road from Agora. Since we have some picture of an Agorist society and an all too good picture of a statist society, let us connect them by slowly degenerating one into the other. Since it is usually more difficult to see how the quote-unquote real here and now becomes the possible, let's run the film backwards. Let us start with an Agorist society and run backwards in time to what we have now, a statist society. The state exists because of a mystique that confers upon it the sanction of the victim. Thus, we each must have lost our sanction of the state for the agora to have come about. Very well, running the film of this in-between period backward, it should appear that some quote-unquote mental plague is infecting contented agorists to persuade them, one by one, to give up their freedom and submit to control by some embryonic government, a criminal gang with a good line of buncombe. At first, the state would be able to tax and mobilize only its followers. It would be a voluntary organization, sadomasochistic, to be sure, but still tolerated by the unaffected agorists. Every time the state tried to prey on insured agorists, it would be brought to arbitration and restitution enforced. Still, against all reason, the infection grows, and the state is too powerful now for restitution to be enforced. Some privileged people are able to live successfully off plunder and be protected by the mindless subjects of the new state who will sacrifice their own property and even their lives so that some may live off others. Remember, this is the opposite of how people think sanely because we are deliberately going backwards. It should be a comfort to know that this route is highly unlikely in a forward direction. The state now has its power elite, ruling class, conspiracy, or whatever term you like best. They can distribute some of this unearned wealth to bribe agorists who have little conviction and a weak will to join the infected masses. Now the state reaches a level that permits it not only to stave off the protection companies, but actually to attack them. At this point, the companies go underground or counter-economic, still enforcing contracts among the remaining agorists and those who are not being very well defended by the inefficient state apparatus, as well as those who are not in favor with the statists' top-level elite. Otherwise, people look out for statist enforcers as much as possible and develop evasive techniques in order to keep their manufacturer, trade, and services from detection and capture. They develop counter-economic techniques, and they keep on going. Finally, the state compels its new citizens to give up their gold for worthless paper, and then the state divides into several states and mobilizes the citizens to get to see which ruling class will get the biggest share of the tax plunder. Sounds like we've gone a little crazy imagining anyone permitting this. True enough, but unfortunately, this craziest picture of all describes nothing less than the reality we live in right now. The path from here to Agora now becomes blindingly obvious. As more people reject the state's mystifications, nationalism, pseudo-economics, false threats, and betrayed political promises, the counter-economy grows both vertically and horizontally. Horizontally, it involves more and more people who turn more and more of their activities toward the counter-economic. Vertically, it means new structures, businesses, and services. They grow specifically to serve the counter-economy, like safe communication links, arbitrators, insurance for specifically illegal, quote-unquote, illegal activities, early forms of protection technology, and even guards and protectors. Stuff like that. Eventually, the underground breaks into the overground, where most people are agorists. Few are statists, and the nearest state enforcement cannot effectively crush them. These agorist condensations are highly vulnerable when first exposed, but will probably evaporate back into the anonymous masses when seriously threatened. Finally, one grows large enough to defend itself against the nearest state. See Chapter 7 regarding the many ways that it can defend itself, or last week's episode. Oh wait, no. Was it last week? Anyways, moving on. Others rally to it, and those agorists staying home under state's rule become ever richer, trading ports with the first agora condensations. The rapid collapse of state taxation ability at this point will push the state to relying even more on inflation to support itself. The counter-economists abandon fiat money ever faster and use gold and trusted agorist gold warehouse receipts. We can call those hard money checks. The runaway inflation approaches what Ludwig von Mises termed the crack-up boom. Paper money is completely abandoned, like 1923 German Reichsmark, and in 1781 the U.S. Continentals, and 1787 French assignats. I don't know how to speak French, people. It's all right. Assignats. Let's say that. Assignats. See the aforementioned novel Alongside Night for a thrilling presentation of this scenario. At the critical point when the protection companies can protect anyone who asks for a policy and is willing to pay for it, the state loses its monopoly of legitimized coercion. Once the power elite realizes that it has come to this, they will throw all the force they have left at the agora. The protection companies will defend the agorists. The taxpayers will flee the state to the free market. The military will desert the state as the state runs out of acceptable pay and supplies for them, and the state will lose. The state will collapse. The last sentence describes the agorist revolution, except no substitute behavior involving agorists' quote-unquote attacks on the state. We are strictly defensive. Some people, let me say that again. We are strictly defensive. Some people with grudges against the state, incited because of state-murdered loved ones, may undertake some spectacular commando raids and such, but that would not be the norm. Having spelled all this out, we still have one big question left unanswered. Why has this not happened already? The false dichotomy. Divide and conquer has been a statist motto and tactic since Julius Caesar. The division of libertarianism from counter-economics has many causes, but several can be attributed to statist encouragement of illogic, irrationality, and sheer mysticism. Nowhere is this more evident than in the very field of thought confronting us: moral philosophy and economics. It is noteworthy here to remember that the first economist, Adam Smith, was a professor of moral philosophy. Morally, the state and its clerical toadies have separated the moral from the practical. Several strains of religious thought, Kantian altruism, down to Hegel's explicit worship of the state, have told people to try to live morally, but always fail. Then the people were to let the state, with the blessings of the established church of statist ideology, punish them. Economically, the court economists have distorted and changed the laws of economics to suit the ruling group. Mercantilism, economic nationalism, Fabianism, fascism, Keynesianism, monetarism, supply-side economics, socialism, social democracy, progressivism, New Deal, Fair Deal, Square Deal, New Frontier, Just Society, Great Society, War Communism, Unspecified Hope and Change, and the middle-of-the-road isms are political frauds and economic nonsense. In most cases, the priests, intellectuals, and rulers knew what they were doing and continued doing it until the snake oil no longer sold. Then they simply slapped a new label on the same noxious brew. Most people are ignorant of economics today and remain frightened by the subject. Most people think morality is either impossible, irrelevant, or something they can do nothing about, but which will catch up with them eventually, either while they are alive or after their death. As many sages have repeated, the truth will set you free. It's really knowing the truth will make you free. Even the cases where the truth was dimly seen, as through a glass darkly. The libertarian effects have been visible. The liberating effects have been visible, rather. Rebellious religious sects often morphed into authoritarian cults, but some achieved incredible freedom, such as the Rhode Island Baptists, the Pennsylvanian Quakers, the American Deists, who advanced the American revolutionary ideology. Adam Smith and his immediate followers in Europe created such an impact in the early 19th century trade policies that a wave of economic prosperity swept the world with just a lowering of trade barriers toward freedom. Then came World War I and the heyday of socialism, justified largely by the failure of free enterprise, quote unquote failure. It did not fail. It was stifled by international, quote unquote, progressive regulation and external war, quote unquote, emergencies. With the collapse of socialism and its various offspring, such as Soviet communism and American liberalism, a vacuum has opened for an ideology to inspire and guide thinking people. Though the states of the world give lip service to various socialist ideals, they are aware, or their higher circles are aware, that socialist ideals are losing their ability to beguile. Perhaps something called libertarianism, having given up its remaining ties to liberty while promising to provide it through statism, will be the next bottle of snake oil the confidence men of the state will offer to maintain our sanctions. The state in the mind. The state has guns and men to use them. As we have seen, however, it not only can fail to coerce a rebellious majority, it cannot even stop an enterprising minority of black marketeers and other counter-economists. The state must be defeated in each person's mind. Once you personally reject its hold over you, you are as free as your intelligence, your will to take risks, and the aid of your allies can keep you. New converts to Christianity describe a similar process, which they call being born again. Even in darkest Russia or China, entrepreneurs thrive and, for a high price, buy their well-being and additional freedom. Of course, any North American, Australian, or European reading this should have a relatively easier time and a higher payoff. What may be needed, in addition to spreading the word and living it, is some form of agorist psychology. Perhaps we can use the examples of therapy for childhood mistreatment or consciousness-raising groups for feminists, gays, and other obviously oppressed groups. We can all get together in small affinity groups of trusted friends and allies to dig our contradictions out from our unconscious. We can flush out the state from our heads by ourselves or together or both ways. Every law that you obey must be re-examined with the thought, how does it protect life and property? If, as almost every law in our system does, it actually constricts the market or steals outright, it should not be obeyed save when force is reported nearby and menacing you directly. Once you have successfully arranged your life to live in the free market anarchy to the extent that you can accept the risks, the higher the risks, the bigger the payoff, including freedom, you can and will quite naturally add to your ranks. Risks are lowered by trustworthy marketeers working together. Soon everyone will know agorists are the most trustworthy of all. Come runaway inflation and depressions, the unemployed and bankrupt in the state's economy will see unlimited jobs and entrepreneurial opportunities, not to mention the preserved wealth for capital. The counter-economy offers the wealth for capital that the counter-economy offers, and join it, if only to keep from starving, losing their homes, their family support, and their remaining self-respect. Remember, an agorist is one who lives counter-economically without guilt for his or her heroic day-to-day actions, with the old libertarian morality of never violating another person or property. There is no membership card to fool you. An agorist is one who lives agorism, except no counterfeits. There are agorists, quote unquote, trying to live up to it. There are, of course, liars who will claim to be anything. As Yoda said so succinctly, do or do not. There is no try. That's agorism. Okay. Shall we read the afterword? Afterword. Beyond basic agorism. A few words may be appropriate here for the reader who enjoyed the primer but wishes to go on to the hard stuff. There are two ways to go. Horizontally, one can delve deep into the economics, counter-economics, revisionist history, and some areas not really covered here, such as libertarian philosophy, psychology, and literature. There are plenty of sources for those who wish to check out some of our claims here or specialize in an area of personal excitement. Vertically, one has fewer choices because few publications have emerged so far from this brand new movement. This author has published the New Libertarian Manifesto, available from CoPubCo. For those who wish to go beyond mere simple agorism to become activists, advanced protection agents defending the counter-economy by public relations, education, and other means. Websites such as agorism.info and agorist.com have sprung up, created by agorists eager to extend theory into practical action. There he is himself, Samuel Edward Konkin III. He passed away on February 23rd of 2004, born on July 8th of 1947. A full-sized book, Counter-Economics, is awaiting publication by CoPubCo, though it lay unfinished at the time of SEK3's death. It will emphasize examples and practice, the theory being as much as we already covered here. Thank you. The first edition of An Agorist Primer is set in the century... Okay. And a little bit about the author. I'm sorry. Samuel Edward Konkin III was a vanguard movement theorist and hardcore activist since the historic split between libertarians and conservatives at the Young Americans for Liberty. Is that what that is? YAF? Excuse me. Young American whatever convention in St. Louis in 1969. I wasn't alive in 69. Anyways, if you know what YAF stands for, put it in the chat. We'll talk about it. I've probably heard of it. It's just, anyways, in the subsequent 3.5 decades, he served as editor and publisher of the longest-lived libertarian publication, beginning as Laissez-Faire in 1970, then as the New Libertarian Notes from 1971 to 1975, New Libertarian Weekly from 1975 to 1977, the longest-running Libertarian Weekly, and New Libertarian from 1978 to 1990. He wrote the seminal work on agorism, New Libertarian Manifesto, in 1980. I have a copy of that behind me on the bookshelf. He has coined the following terms and concepts, many of which have turned up in all libertarian publications: counter-economics, agorism, minarchy, partyarchy, anti-principles, left libertarianism, anarcho-Zionism. He coined the term brownout, red market, coctopus, and more. He has influenced the works of authors such as J. Neil Schulman, who wrote Alongside Night, and Victor Koman, who wrote Solomon's Knife, who both had their first professional fiction sales in the pages of his publications. Mr. Konkin served as executive director of the Agorist Institute, an outreach organization promulgating the principles of agorism and counter-economics. He was guest of honor at science fiction conventions and libertarian gatherings, and was a seasoned world traveler. His unfinished magnum opus, Counter-Economics, will see publication in the near future. Mr. Konkin died February 23rd of 2004. The New Libertarian Manifesto. Let's see if I can look, if there's a index of terms, which there is not. But if you've never heard of the term anarcho-Zionism before, let's see what's in the chat here. So thank you for joining me on this journey through this book the last few weeks. So it's been a real fun time going through An Agorist Primer. Let's see. The Liebercast was here. Butlerian Hadinan. Don't ban me. Every truther chatter's first request. Oh yeah. Butlerian Hadinan. That's like a Dune reference. I remember you crazy guy. Anyways, Jennifer. Hey, Jennifer. Good to see you here. An agorist. Can I explain what an agorist is? I just spent 3 weeks doing that. Go back and listen to the last 3 episodes. +1, the third. Sir Ril Nil Mill. Thanks for being in the chat. Number +1, the third. I have a 5th on my bowling team. That guy is a Christian military. All right. Well, Jennifer has a good idea. We could go to public schools and talk about anarchy. They probably wouldn't like that too much if we went to a public school and talked about anarchy. Okay, so you asked what an agorist is. I hope you get the answer to that when you go back and read this. But he says in his book, remember, an agorist is one who lives counter-economically without guilt for his or her heroic day-to-day actions, with the old libertarian morality of never violating another person's a person or property. Okay, so it's all about like a gray market almost, black market economics. I hope that helps. Otherwise, you can enjoy the last few weeks here. Let's see. Maybe we go back to the beginning of tonight. But tonight was the great episode to be, I read it, but it seems to me like an agorist is a person who just understands, the natural rights of another person. And with their free will, they choose to not perform violent actions against them, things that would otherwise restrict other people's freedom to go about their day and to enjoy their life and to live in freedom and prosperity. And so, yeah. But an agorist would also understand that a market is necessary for trading goods and providing services to people. I don't suppose an agorist would have anything against a person for being a hermit out in the middle of the woods. Doesn't sound to me like there's any sort of weird, persuasive, or conniving techniques being used to corral people into a community with agorism. But should you choose to live in a community with agorism, that community is going to need a market, right? Like agora is Greek for marketplace. So an agorist believes in the market, and on the market, good things will prevail. And so I remember reading, last year, Gustave de Molinari, his Production of Defense. And we went over a little bit about this tonight with public defense. So back in the day, the anarchist philosophers would gather around, and a lot of people had doubts in anarchy because, the state is the ones that are providing public defense. Like, where are we going to get our public defense from? Well, Molinari, he came up with the idea to bring the public defense to the market, and thus creating accountability among those people that are providing the defense. See, with the state, you don't get much accountability from those people at all. They can go and throw a flash grenade into the open window or through a closed window into the wrong house first, while they're serving a no-knock warrant, and they get the address incorrect, and they can throw a flash grenade into a house and burn a child. And, they don't get to, what do we do about that? Maybe a couple of the cops get they get put on administrative leave, or they get fired, or whatever. They get an early retirement. They're still collecting taxpayer dollars with their pensions and everything like that. But the point being is that the company itself doesn't go out of business for bad practice. On the free market, if the public defense were brought to the free market, then a defense company that is going to go and seek the reclamation or the restitution on the part of the person who hires them, like what we went over tonight. Should that company go and do something completely immoral, like throw a flash grenade through a window into a baby's crib, after getting the address wrong? So first, they're not even supposed to be at that house. Second, they do that horrible thing to a child. And so anyways, you could fire that company, and the people that did that would, could possibly have a nasty reputation. There's plenty of situations in the modern day where, cops go and do something completely crazy, immoral, and they don't even get put on like a blacklist or anything like that, and they go to the next county over and they get a job, like sometime later, and they continue working. And you have this super violent thug on the streets in a costume with a badge and a gun and a license granted to them by the state to go and perform incredibly immoral and violent actions against otherwise peaceful people. See, you really don't have the right to call the cops unless it's to perform an action that you have the right to perform yourself. You might want to maybe not use the state aggression to do so, but say you're in need of some self-defense. There doesn't matter who is coming to your defense. Like it's not immoral to ask anyone to come to to aid you in your defense of your person or property. I recommend maybe staying away from the police, but just keep in mind that is something that people tend to overlook. Even anarchists tend to overlook that idea. So with the idea of we already have like security companies, right? Like ADT, certain other companies out there provide security, personal security to your home or whatever, and say those companies also had the strong guys with the guns that are going to show up should your house get broken into, and you can't, say, defend yourself. So you rely on a security company to do so. If they do a poor job, you can fire them and they can go out of business because not a lot of people. So anyways, you get the point. Cops go and do something completely fucking violent or whatever. You can't, at this point in time, is the government going out of business? Perhaps. I mean, they're pretty much insolvent, but like, what do we replace them with? This is why it's important to build parallel systems when you're trying to escape a system. And the purpose of a system is what it does. So when you understand that, POSIWID, as I've learned from James Corbett recently, the purpose of a system is what it does. The acronym is POSIWID. And when you understand like the outcome of a system is what its purpose is. So when they say that the purpose of this is to provide public defense, well, is it really? Because what it's actually doing is it's scaring the public into obedience. That's what it's truthfully doing. And you would be lying to yourself if you told yourself that it was anything different. Because when those blue lights go on behind you, we've all been trained since early childhood that means that you pull over. And thanks to propaganda shows like back in the 90s or late 80s into the 90s, like the show Cops and all sorts of movies out there, and even real life situations that we've seen unfold on, television, like the news, and, these things do happen. I mean, the evidence is there, and the news might be lying, but it's pretty hard. I mean, you don't even need the news to see the things I'm talking about. You could just go on, a social media website and you can see some of these videos of what these guys do to people. And they've put on their blue lights. Just say you have a plate light out, even something as simple as that. And they put on their blue lights and you don't pull over. I mean, does that give them the license to go and run you down? They think so. And it's extremely dangerous, their ideology of authority. And so, yeah, we've all been told that they're there to serve and protect, but really what they're there to do is to instill fear for the general public to be obedient to who? The government. And when you look into the history of the police, what do you find? At one point in time, they were a volunteer force of people, and it started in Massachusetts, in Boston. And in the South, there was a different iteration of them, but really, state-run police started in Massachusetts, in Boston, and you can look it up on the Massachusetts. I believe the state police website has a history of the police force in Massachusetts. There's a website somewhere out there with this, and what you find out is that early on it was a night watch. It was the night watch. Well, who got assigned to the night watch? And why was there a night watch? Well, because people would go out and do crazy things at night. They'd tackle women in alleyways and do all sorts of really immoral things. So there was an effort to put a stop to nutty things happening at night by assigning people to a night watch. Who got assigned? Well, it was the same people who went and did the bad things and now had to serve some sort of community service, depending on the level of transgression that they enacted or were accused of or found guilty of. Say drunken and, public intoxication, for instance, they'd get assigned to the night watch. Well, they'd find these guys, passed out in the alleys instead of doing their jobs. Right. And back in those days, they would have like a big rattle, a noisemaker or a whistle with a baton. And if there was something really bad going on, they'd blow the whistle or make a bunch of noise and start shouting. And all the people would come out of their houses and they would all team up and put a stop to it. The ships that would land in Boston Harbor, they would get robbed. So the merchants that owned the docks would hire their own personal security forces. Well, eventually it got expensive. And what did they do? They lobbied with the government of Massachusetts at the time to have the taxpayers pay for that security under the guise of the materials coming into port were there for the people. So if the people wanted the materials to come into port, they would need to pay for the security. But what it was rich merchants that were tricking the governments into making laws or paying the government officials into making laws to make the people pay taxes for the security of the ships. Thus, the state-run police agencies were formed in Massachusetts back in like the 1600s. And from there, you get the more well-known history of the police or officers down in the South that were paid to go and track down runaway slaves that were trying to get out of the South and come up to the North where the free states were. And those were the officers or the overseers, KRS-One. We went over this like a month or so ago in another episode that I called like Stop the Propaganda. And we went over this. KRS-One does a song. I forget the name of the song, but Sean and I talked about this. And he talks about the weird, KRS-One talks about the weird similarity of the word overseer and the word officer, and how it can be like quickly, if anyways, go listen to the song, the whoop, whoop, that's the sound of the police. Anyways, I digress. So we see the different ways that this system was set up, and the purpose of the system is what it does. Okay. Not what you're told it does. The propaganda, it's actually in reality, the real outcome of it is the purpose of the system. Okay. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with the cops. You got at some point, like, you got to understand that like they're going to exert their authority over you. I don't want you to go out there. I'm not trying to influence anybody to go out there and do anything that would put them in danger or get them into serious trouble or anything like that. If you're here and you understand the things that I'm talking about, we need you on this side of the bars. If we're going to win this fight for freedom, we got to get the numbers, right? Like what Konkin is talking about. We need a majority of people that understand this stuff to really start to make headway on this fight for freedom. So we can't go and, what are you going to go do? Spit in their faces and give them a reason to put you in cuffs and behind bars? That would be foolish. Let's get real. That would be foolish. I would encourage people to talk to these police officers and see if you can really reach that center in them, that shred of humanity that's left, and help them understand that their bosses, the government doesn't even care about them. And let alone any of the rest of us. And they're the ones that are keeping all the slaves in line. They're the house slaves. And we're all the ones out in the fields. So they need to understand that. And you can't make them understand that if you're being rude and obnoxious, spitting in their faces, and making their lives harder. Have some compassion like they don't have. And be honest with them, and don't back down, but don't be a jerk, because you're never going to get you're never going to get through to anybody by being a jerk in your position. So just, that's a little bit of history for you guys out there. In terms of the purpose of the system is what it does. Okay. Just like the school system, what does it actually do? It turns out that what it does is it inculcates obedience in the minds of young people. So that way one day they'll go out and get a job and they'll pay their taxes and they'll obey the authorities and do all this stuff. And so that's its purpose. Everybody should learn how to read and write and do arithmetic, and everyone should learn how to read a history book, and to how to think and to, and all that stuff. Not what to think. They should learn how to think. And I encourage, I think that in some aspects, even the public school system does do that job, but overall, what does it really do? And there's a lot of good, and I've over the years, I've had some pretty hot takes about the public school system, but lately I've been having a change of heart about it in terms of like the bad mouthing of all the teachers and the parents that send their kids there. It's a really difficult decision to make, and it's a really difficult lifestyle to uphold. And there are, like it or not, there are some good people that are trying to make a difference in that system. It's just when you're an ant going up against a giant, it's really difficult. It just is. So I'd encourage everybody to just try your best to see if homeschooling is right for yourself. because that inculcation into obedience of the state is something that maybe we should try to avoid. If we want a better future, we got to stop doing what we've already been doing for generations, and we got to try something new. Okay. And that includes like not teaching fear, because if we want to change the future, we can't have our kids being afraid of it either. So that's when you like got to understand about how you talk to your children about all this stuff. And really, like, I've learned this through making some mistakes of my own. And you don't want to instill fear into these little kids, because if you want them to be brave and you want them to grow up to be brave adults who have self-actualized and come to a position in their life where they can actually affect some change in the world, you can't have them being afraid of that world. So truth and honesty is a great thing to practice with your kids, but you also need to know your child in their individual position in order to know how to have that truth and honesty with them. And with that, I'll leave you guys. I got nothing else in the chamber to go and rant about, but just remember, love over fear. Fear is the mind killer, and love is going to win the day. If we just practice that, then we're going to get very far. I love you guys. And on your way out, just remember, you own yourself, period. You're not really owned by anybody else. They can make all the claims that they want, but in reality, you are free. You are born free. Anarchy is what exists. And the control system is fake. Government isn't real. They are an egregore. They don't really exist. They have to trick you. They have to put the idea between your ears, and that's how they win. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery, like the good Bob Marley said, and we'll get very far. Come back next week. Same time, same bat place. I love you all. Peace.
No masters, no slaves, no rulers, no state, no